Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining back. Yes, feel.
Please.
Yay! It worked.
Okay, cool. Cool.
Yes.
All right, so
You
we
can't
cooking
hear.
on gas?
Wait.
Wait,
Can
who
you
they can't
guys?
hear?
Can you guys hear me? Can you hear us?
Okay, bueno. Okay, sounds good.
That's a yes.
So we cooking on gas?
I think so. I think so.
All right. So, okay, we can see and hear. Okay, good. All right. So I don't know. You just want me to start off with it?
Welcome.
Or...
No, I mean, I'm gonna introduce you a bit. So, welcome everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties there. You know how technology is set up, but yes, we're on to our second segment of our Instathon, and we have none other than Mr. Ralph Contave, which I am so happy that he agreed to join us today. And I am super excited to learn, sorry, my clumsy self, to learn something about
Right.
St. Martin history.
Mhm.
And, as Lisa mentioned beforehand, in school we're not taught a lot about our St. Martin history, and it's really inspiring to know that we have young people among us, digging a bit more deeper, figuring out our history, our past, and sharing it with us. So thank you, Ralph, and you can take over.
Okay.
Us.
So good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for having me here. And congratulations to you guys as well for organizing this. I've always believed that, you know, you don't necessarily have to be in St. Martin to create an impact on St. Martin. And this is a perfect example of doing such. So, for me, I've always had a great, deep, strong passion about history in general, but especially St. Martin history because I think we were dealt a disservice where we didn't learn much significant things about our island. And for me, in order to progress as a society, we have to know where we came from so we can know where we're going. And so I guess a foundation for this brief history lesson I will share based on this quote from one of my favorite historians. His name is Dr. John Henry Clark.
Okay.
And he once said, history is not everything, but it is a starting point. History is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is a compass they use to find themselves on the map of human geography. It tells them where they are, but more importantly, what they must be. So, on that basis, welcome to this history class. And I think one of the first questions we need to ask ourselves is, what is St. Martin today? How did we become the St. Martin we see that we grew up in? And I think, based on my research, I think it boils down to two things. St. Martin is a constituent state, and the second thing is St. Martin is an economic community. So the first one, in terms of being a constituent state, this is a result of the June 22nd referendum that took place in the year 2000. Most of us were, I think, in first grade at that time. But basically, this was the second referendum that St. Martin held to determine what would be the future of the island. And one of the main reasons why this took place was the fact that people, most of the political class on St. Martin felt that we were being hampered and we were not being able to effectively govern the island because we were under the yoke of Curacao. Before that, before the Netherlands Antilles, St. Martin, along with the other islands, used to be known as Curacao and its dependencies, meaning that Curacao was a colonial capital for the Netherlands and everything else depended on Curacao. But that changed in 1954 after World War II, when Holland, along with other European nations, they decided that it was fair, or also for the sake of global development, that they should decolonize. So Holland's way of decolonizing was setting up the Netherlands Antilles, which was an autonomous federation. However, St. Martin has yet to be truly decolonized. But that's another discussion. But nonetheless, so when that referendum took place, there were four options. Option A was to stay within the Netherlands Antilles. Option B was status aparte, which also, as a side note, was something that Aruba achieved because Aruba was the first to leave the Netherlands Antilles. Option C was to be integrated within Holland, and option D was independence. Now, St. Martin, the first referendum in 1994, St. Martin decided to choose for option A to stay within the Netherlands Antilles, but later on in 2000, we chose option B. And so within that 10-year process from 2000 to 2010, St. Martin's goal was to prepare ourselves for this new status. And to be honest, and I think the experts that I spoke to, that I interviewed, would tell you that honestly, St. Martin did not make a great effort until the end of the year, just for the sake of saying that, hey, well, we have a new status and, country St. Martin and whatnot. But nonetheless, so that is one aspect of what St. Martin is today, a constituent state, where we have so-called autonomy within the Dutch kingdom.
Yeah.
But the second thing, which is, I believe, very important in terms of culturally, we are more so an economic community. And so what I mean by that is the fact that unlike most islands, St. Martin has by far, one of the most diverse societies in the world. I mean, rarely could you go to another country, especially another island, and find over 100 different nationalities. However, this came out as a result of the faith that people around the world put into the St. Martin economy. Reason being was because, unlike most islands, we were further developed in terms of our infrastructure, as far as the harbor, the airport, and the hotel industry was concerned. And so many people came to St. Martin for the sake of their financial interests, whether it's big business people we know today, big hoteliers, but even your average citizen to this day. Because, for example, I was born and grew up in St. Martin, but my parents are Haitian. And I'm sure most of us can remember, most of us went to school where, for example, there wasn't much, quote-unquote, St. Martin children where people who had both parents from St. Martin. I can remember very well, in the average classroom in St. Martin, especially today, has a couple children of St. Martin heritage, but, children who were born here, but, parents from Santo Domingo, from Dominican Republic, from India, from China, from St. Kitts and other islands. And so that is the St. Martin of today. Constituent state, politically, a new constitutional status where we have autonomy in the Dutch kingdom and economic community. But what led to us becoming all of this, I believe we have to go back to a very important date in our island history, which is 1648. So definitely not 1943, because Christopher Columbus did not discover anything.
Yeah.
There were other people living here. There were other people living everywhere else. So he met other people, but he discovered nothing. I just want to mention that because we learned that in school. Nonetheless,
Christopher
exactly.
Columbus. That's what we used to do in high school.
Nonetheless, so the first people to, other than the Tainos, to come into the Western Hemisphere were the Spanish, because they colonized majority of the Western Hemisphere, and all the other European nations came along because they were jealous and they wanted piece of the pie. And so the Spanish, they had some sort of settlement on St. Martin, but it wasn't, St. Martin was never an interest for them, other than the fact that St. Martin to this day is very strategically placed geographically, that makes it a great interest for geopolitics. So in terms of trade, because of our proximity to other islands in the Caribbean, but also in terms of our proximity to the United States and Europe. So the Dutch and the French, they came here in St. Maarten, and as we know, the Dutch, they built Fort Amsterdam in, what is it called? DB? Yeah, on DB Hill. However, what the Spanish did, when they realized that the Dutch settled here, they came from the back of the island through Point Blanche, and they basically snuck up on the Dutch, and they built a fort in Point Blanche, and they came around from there. And you know, the thing is, the way the Dutch built their fort, it was facing the seas, so then they couldn't, quote unquote, see behind of them. And so that is how the Spanish, they kicked them out of the island. However, it didn't last because, again, the Spanish, they were more so concerned about gold. So they went into bigger islands like Hispaniola and then Latin America. And so they just left St. Maarten. So in 1648, France and Holland, they decided that they will share the island through the historic Treaty of Concordia. But it's important to note that the Treaty of Concordia really held no water after it was signed, because France and Holland, they betrayed each other over 10 times. So St. Maarten, actually, even since 1648, it was, at one point it was entirely French, then it was entirely Dutch, and on 2 occasions, St. Maarten was entirely English. So even England came to St. Maarten and governed St. Maarten at a period of time. But nonetheless, in the late 1800s, both France and Holland, they decided, you know, that they will finally respect the Treaty of Concordia. And so from there, we go into 2 other very important dates in St. Maarten history. The first one being 1848, which is when France abolished slavery. And one of the reasons why this is significant was because here you have an island with an open border, where one side of the island is free and the other one, people are in chains. So 2 days after France abolished slavery in 1848, sorry, you have the historic Diamond 26, which was basically a group of enslaved Africans in the Diamond Estate, which is located in Colbay, between Colbay and Bellevue. And they ran over to the French side and they became free. And so the Dutch, they basically considered St. Maarten about like slavery abolished de facto, because it was so easy to cross over from the Dutch side to the French side. You could have done so from either Bellevue or what's the other area? Belvedere, yeah, Belvedere to French Quarter.
Yeah.
And so from there, the Dutch, they decided that they would abolish slavery in 1863. And I have to also mention that the Dutch were the most reluctant to abolishing slavery because they profited greatly from the slave trade. So one of the things, sorry?
I said, tell me more.
One of the things that, oh wow, time almost up. Anyhow, one of the things that they did was they gave reparations to all the plantation owners on the Dutch side who owned slaves, for every single slave.
Yeah.
So I say this as a side note because there's always this discussion whether or not St. Maarten or the rest of the Caribbean deserve reparations from Holland. But there's a proof that there's always been reparations, even since then continued. Nonetheless, very briefly, what I really want to emphasize, so we have all of that in context. So what happened there, I believe, is where the birth of St. Maarten came into place, meaning from that period, France and Holland totally abandoned St. Maarten. So there was no sort of investment, no sort of true government administration done on the islands. So it was left upon St. Maarten people to develop and build their own island. And this was done, of course, through the African tradition and cultures and traditions that survived, you know, that they carried with them despite the harsh conditions of slavery. And that is where, for example, one of the main values or things that St. Maarten people built St. Maarten on was land and family. Because, again, at that time, there was no sort of there was no sort of French or Dutch side. People in those days used to say they're going over to Margot or to Great Bay, not even Phillipsburg. They used to say Great Bay. And And so people, you know, they fell in love. They bonded with each other, and so like the island was really one island. And so at that moment, and I remember speaking to an old man who spoke about how his parents met because his mother was coming over from French Quarter, and he was walking, going up home, whatever, and they met, you know, across the hills, and then from there he was born.
Yeah.
But land is something very significant and pivotal to the development of this nation, because you cannot build a nation without land, because land is tied to your legacy, to your family name. And that is why so moving forward to this present day, where you see a lot of St. Martiners who are basically in a state of like impoverishment because we lost a lot of our deeds, our titles to the land, because that is what, for example, that is what makes you an American. That land is what makes you a Haitian or whatever, because your bloodline is tied to exactly. And so from that period, one of the things that helped build St. Martin was something called jollifications. And I'm gonna close because I think I might really go over your time.
Yeah. I mean, you could finish on this note, and then.
Okay, I'll finish on this note. But I think I gotta do another one because I had so much information.
Definitely, yes.
So then let's look at it like this: jollification. This is where St. Martin people realized that they did not have any help from Holland, any help from no bank, any help from France, and so we would help each other build our communities. We will help each other build our homes. We will help each other develop our farms. And even in this day where we realize, you know, we are in such a desperate position where we now depend on food from the outside. But what would happen if we kept those traditions? You know, even if we didn't export food, we would at least have that security again, because we cultivated, we took care of our land. And so overall, there's much more for me to say.
I trust you. Like, I'm so deep into it, I'm not even looking at the time anymore. But I mean, honestly, I mean, you could finish your last point. I've been saying this for like the past 3 points, but you could finish your last point, and definitely, because I seen in the comments that we have to do another live like this, something much more longer, you know, educating our people. Because especially on the last point that you mentioned, that, you know, back then there was no French and no Dutch. There was just St. Martin. And I think that right now we need to get back to that point, you know?
Correct.
Because I think community building, as you mentioned, is the only way we can move forward in a strategic way, in a positive way, you know? And it's not only for us, but as you mentioned, it's our legacy, our children benefiting from this, you know? And yeah, we need to get St. Martin back on its feet. And I mean, it is possible, because like
it is. We did it before.
Yeah, we were abandoned, and look at us today, you know? And I think we can do it again.
Correct. Yeah. So overall, the last point is simply, I guess that my highlight of this is to know that St. Martin developed St. Martin. All right. The reason why we are an economic community was because of the work that St. Martin people did in St. Martin. When tourism became the big industry, with Mola Bay being one of the biggest hotels in the Caribbean, it employed over hundreds of St. Martin people. At one point, we were managers. It was St. Martin people who managed all these major hotels. So why is it today, when we have more St. Martin people who are educated with degrees, you can't come home and even be a general manager of a major company? And so overall, I want to emphasize that, you know, we are in a position we are today because of the sacrifices our elders made in building this nation. But remember that they did it alone. They did it through their sweat, blood, and tears. Yes, there were a lot of political disadvantages, stuff like corruption and so forth. But then even that in itself is another history lesson, because we overcame that at one point. And so I'm done there because I'm not going to continue. So yeah.
Guys, I mean, I don't know about you, but I got goosebumps throughout this entire history lesson because, whew, child. But I saw in the comments, you know, everyone were really eager to have a part 2. I know I am, so we definitely keep in contact. And thank you for this brief history lesson. It was a mouthful. I hope, you know, you guys You know, literally take it in, you know, think about your actions, think about, like we mentioned, you know, community building, and remember where you came from. You know, I think that is really, really important. And yeah, thank you so much,
No
Ralph.
problem. I
Honestly,
enjoyed it.
thank you. It was really refreshing to have you here
Yeah.
on this live. And I mean, the people, they chanting for you. So
No, we
have
got
a
to do a part two.
definitely, guys. It coming, you know, it coming
And
as
let
we
me just
go.
mention one last historical date. 1974, the island, the government building was burned down because Samoan people were fed up with what was going on. Now, that would be something to continue on. I'm done.
So, guys, you know, take note of that year. Ralph, you gotta come back and teach us more about that.
Cool. All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Have a good afternoon.
I feel like an
I,
old man. How do I exit this?
I, so, guys, I hope you enjoyed that segment as much as I did. Like, honestly, I didn't even look at the time. But, I mean, as we mentioned, guys, remember where you come from. Know that St. Maarten was built on the backs of our people. It was in Holland. It was in France. It was us, our people. So, I mean, that was really, really refreshing to hear. And I mean, it's a pity that we didn't learn this in school. But, you know, when you try to cripple a society, you know, you kind of, you know, take away the knowledge. And knowledge is power to a certain extent. But yes, it was so, so, so refreshing. Up next, we have... I'm gonna play a little music for you guys, you know, lighten up the mood. In case, you know, are you still in your feelings? Yes, Rahul, learning and learning. That is definitely the motto. That is definitely the motto. And up next, we have Heidi and Lisa. So I'm going to end this live, but I'm going to save it to our IGTV, and you guys can rewatch it anytime you want. You know, you can take notes, you know, and you guys have Ralph's handle, or you can message us, and there will definitely be a part 2 to this. So don't feel, you know, like you miss anything. So see you guys soon. And the floor is Lisa's.